First guest on my show, I thought it would be very fitting to have my father on the show, Mr. Ronnie McDowell.
Well, thank you, and I'm here live and in color, and both of us are dressed in black.
Welcome to my show.
And you look mighty pretty.
Thank you.
And I see down here you got a cheat sheet.
Daddy.
I see your notes.
Daddy.
That's okay. Hey.
Yeah, only Daddy would tell on you.
Everybody does it.
Well, you're my dad and I have to have cheat sheets. So,
Yeah, that's
hey,
right.
First
that's
show.
That's right. You
so
don't know anything about me.
There's a lot of probably don't want to know.
Yeah.
You know.
Hey, that goes two ways.
Let's be honest.
Two ways.
So I have my first question for you. This is a question that I've been asked my entire life.
Okay.
What is it like to be Ronnie McDowell's child? So my question in reverse is, what is it like to be my dad?
Well, I'll tell you, and for example, I was at First Watch this morning in Hendersonville. So with George and I, my buddy George, we were getting ready to leave, and this girl stopped me and she goes, "Ain't you Ronnie McDowell?" And I said, "Well, I better be, or I got somebody else's underwear on." So I love that.
I'm not sure what that has to do with being my dad, but go ahead.
I thought you said what is it like?
Oh, yeah, like what is it like to be my dad? Because everybody always has asked me that question. What's it like to have a famous dad and have Ronnie McDowell be your dad? And because you've always been my dad, I don't know. I don't know life any different than you being a successful person and being out in the public eye. So I just thought that was an interesting question because...
That is an interesting question because, you kids, you just look at me like dad.
Yeah.
You don't, and all the TV shows that y'all have been to, all the shows, everything you've witnessed that I have done, in your early childhood, because you were only 5 when I had my first record. So, and I'm sure that had to be like crazy and haywire for you. All that commotion and all that craziness that was going on when I had that first record, which was a huge record, The King Is Gone, about Elvis Presley. I actually had just a little bit of that pandemonium because the Elvis emotion was so high and fans were reaching and trying to tear my clothes off. So I had just a little of that. So it was a crazy world.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember how scared I used to get.
Well, imagine how scared I was.
Well, I was 5.
Well, that's true. I never will forget when that record hit on Friday. They wanted me on the Grand Ole Opry that next night. Well, I didn't even know the words. We just threw it together the night before. So I walked out on the Grand Ole Opry and it was packed. And I was like, "Lord, please let me remember these words." I never missed a syllable or a word. And so then I had to jump in my Camaro and fly down to Chattanooga because they had me on a show at this club called the Hitching Post. So I drove up. Here's all these TV trucks, and the place was just like pandemonium. So this guy walked up to my car and he said, "Hey, Ronnie, the record company has sent me here to represent you, and we have paid 20 girls $20 a piece to scream when you come out. Say, I've never told you this." And I said, you did what? He said, "Yeah, it's that old Colonel Tom Parker thing. And they'll scream, and then that'll make the rest of them scream." I said, "I never knew that." And he goes, "Yeah, that's the way they got all the girls scream for Elvis. But once 2 or 3 of them started, the whole place just erupted." And I said, "Well, that's pretty cool, really."
I've never heard this.
Well, little did he know. Little did I know. When they introduced me, the whole place started rushing the stage, and it scared me to death. So I ran behind my drummer, Doug Anderson, and he goes, "Get away from me, they'll kill me too." See, I've never told you that.
You never told me that.
And
It's
then
so funny.
they put me on a plane the next morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, after all of that. And so I flew to Peoria, Illinois, and on the show were the Gatlin brothers, George Jones and Tammy Wynette.
Huh.
Well, I walked backstage at the mosque in Peoria, and here's the Gatlin brothers, no shirts on. They were doing chin-ups and push-ups, and I went, wow, so this is what people do, before a show. That's really cool. Because I was only 26, and those guys were older than me, but, back then they were in really good shape, and it was really cool being with the Gatlin brothers. But the reason I was so excited was to be on a show with George Jones, who was one of my heroes. And of course, I love Tammy Wynette and the Gatlin brothers, but I never will forget this as long as I live. I did my thing, the Gatlins did their thing, Tammy did hers. And then she come back out and she stood at the microphone. She goes, well, I hate to tell y'all this, but George ain't going to be here. He's down at a little German club entertaining all the patrons.
Now, I've heard this story.
Yeah. So I didn't get to see George. He wasn't there. So the next day, the next morning I get on a plane. I go to the back of the plane. There sits George.
I've never heard that.
And I said, hey, George, where was you at last night? And he goes, sit down, son. And he sat there, and I sat there and talked all the way to Atlanta, which was only like an hour and a half flight. But it was so interesting, his philosophies, kind of like Conway Twitty, and some of the things that he told me. And I'll tell you when you have your other guest here, I want to tell her this story. But anyway, so I was on the show with Kenny Rogers and George down in Atlanta. And my life was just like a whirlwind. It never stopped.
Weren't you on American Bandstand within a week?
I was. Well, 2 weeks later, I was on American Bandstand. And I was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I was getting ready to go on at the Old South Jamboree. And this guy, just before I went on, said, you have a phone call in the back. So I went back there, and this voice goes, Ronnie, this is Dick Clark. You go to the Baton Rouge airport. I have a private jet for you tonight. You're going to be on American Bandstand tomorrow. And I go, yeah, right. Who is this? And he goes, no, Ronnie, this is Dick Clark. So I went to the airport, and I get on this private jet, and he said, now get some rest. I never slept a wink. Well, lo and behold, when I landed at the LA airport, there was a helicopter. I get on the helicopter, wow, and I land right in front of the ABC lot. They rush me into makeup, and I'm looking in the mirror, and here comes Dick Clark. Now, I went, wow, Dick Clark, I can't believe I'm here. And he goes, well, Ronnie, you're number 9 this week. You've sold 1 million records in a week, which is unheard of, and you deserve to be here.
I said,
yeah, and I said, well, I cannot believe that I'm here. I've been watching you since '57, and I know that y'all pantomime, and I'm so glad because I don't know this song that well. He goes, Ronnie, we don't do that anymore. And my heart froze. I said, please don't tell me that. He said, when that red light comes on, there'll be 80 million people watching you.
That helped the
nerves.
nerves.
Then my heart really froze. And he said, but you'll have cue cards underneath the camera. This was before monitors. So, and they wrote it out with a magic marker on big old pieces of paper. But if you Google me on American Bandstand, I look like I knew what I was doing. I never missed a word.
I couldn't tell you were nervous at all. I've watched
but
it a million
inside,
times.
I was petrified. And every time I look at that, I don't look at it that much because I can't stand looking at me. But anyway, the times that I do look at it, the thing that I remember is my lips were I had the biggest lips. It looked like I wonder where you got those. Anyway, it looked like you could stick me on a wall and I'd stay there. That's the only thing I think about every time I see that.
So I have a Dick Clark story for you.
Okay.
I don't even know if you know this. I was a teenager, and as teenagers do, we were fighting. My sister and I were fighting at home.
Not.
And nobody would answer the phone, and it was her turn. So I got really angry with her, and I was screaming, get the phone! And she wouldn't do it, so I ran and grabbed it, extremely rude, and said, hello! And somebody said, is Ronnie there? And I said, no. And I was being a typical horrible teenager.
You never told me this, and this is terrible.
Yes.
You talked to my friend Dick Clark like that.
How'd you know that's who it was?
Because I know.
And I said, can I take a message? And he said, this is Dick Clark. And I went, Daddy's going to kill me.
You never told me that.
He never told either, so thank So I was so glad he never told on me because I was so afraid that he was going to tell you.
Wow.
But I didn't get in trouble, but I answered the phone that way to Dick Clark. So.
Well, that's all right. He probably understood about kids.
Yeah, he was really sweet. He was
Yeah.
a good man. But your success story is one of the things I wanted to talk about because you wrote a hot check to write or to go in and record that song.
The King
and
is
then
Gone.
became an instant success. And nowadays, that's kind of coming back. It kind of went away for a while where you couldn't do that. Nowadays,
What,
with
write
social
hot checks?
No, well, no, not that part.
I
but
guess you
become
can
an
still do it, but
overnight
it still ain't
success.
legal.
Well, you could do it, but become.
I heard a doorbell ring, and I bet that's Georgette Jones.
I bet so.
That's pretty cool.
But nowadays with social media, you can actually do that now. You can become an overnight success again, and that went away for a while. You weren't able to do that for a long time, but nowadays people are
Well, just
they don't even have to have a record label anymore.
and here's the weird thing about it. 2008, I wrote a song called "Hey, Mr. Oil Man." Well, my brother Jerry called me Friday on the way to Red Bowling Springs where we stream, and he said, he calls me Homer because when I used to answer my office phone, I didn't want nobody to know who it was. So I said, this is Homer, the cleanup guy. So he started calling me Homer. So he called me Friday and he said, Homer, you need to put that Hey, Mr. Oil Man out. These gas prices are going through the roof. So we put it out. I called Chris McDowell, who does my social media. We put it out, and that was, 4 days ago. And we've had almost 80,000 hits
Wow.
because of people tired of all the gas prices and everything. So you're exactly right. So see what that's doing?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah,
what
that's
it's
what
done.
social media, you can, if you have something that sparks the public's interest, you can reach the masses, thank goodness, without these record companies anymore.
Yeah.
So that's what Hey Mr. Oil Man's doing.
Yeah.
But it's organic and doing it on its own because of, the gas prices.
Yeah. You're still on Curb Records, right?
I'm still with Curb Records. As a matter of fact, I have a new contract, but I haven't signed it yet because of some of the stipulations. But I've been with Curb since '84.
Wow. Long time.
How many people can say that?
Not many. That's
Especially
for sure.
at my young age, which, let's see, March 25th, 72 years ago, I was a pain in my mother's, and for years after that, I still was. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't give Mother too much grief. I didn't.
How much grief did I give you?
A lot. Yeah, you didn't take after me in that department, because I guess you girls are different. I don't know.
Different types of grief, right?
Yeah.
I do have one more question for
Okay.
you. So, do you have any idea how many millions you have sold in records and albums and singles?
I don't have a clue, but I know that the first record has done almost 6 million records, which is,
That's
astronomical.
just The King Is Gone alone.
King is gone.
And older women, do you know how many?
Older women, well, that's like 3 million, but I didn't write that. That was Jamie O'Hara, who unfortunately passed away a year ago, January.
Mm-hmm.
And older women had a revival, like you said, on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know what TikTok was, but it has now been seen like 340 million times because these kids, for some reason, they picked up singing my song, Older Women. It is so crazy.
It's actually more plays than that now. Older women. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's so crazy how a certain song will. I was in Lafayette, Tennessee, and I walked into this barbecue place, and this young 21-year-old girl, she goes, "Hey, we all love Older Women around here. When it comes on, we just sing to it." And I'm like, "You're 21." But I guess a certain song just reaches and touches people, like Hey, Mr. Oil Man. The reason why is because gas prices. King is gone, Elvis died.
Yeah.
Watching girls go by, every man on the earth.
Unfortunately, right?
Well, that I wrote that, and it's now been played over 3 million times on the radio.
It would be interesting to see how many plays you have online how many streams on your songs.
Yeah,
And,
I did not know that I had recorded over 1,000 songs until Chris
Wow.
McDowell told me. That blew my
Wow.
mind. He knows more about me, my songs, than I do,
Wow.
because I didn't know I'd. But then I got to
Wow.
thinking, Elvis Presley did 500 during his short. He only lived to be 42, but he recorded. But see, I've almost doubled his lifespan, so it makes sense that I've done about over 1,000.
Well, thank you for being the first guest on my show.
I'm more than happy to be the first guest, and sweet of you to ask Daddy. And I love you.
I love you too.